Everybody on UK Crime Book Club. I'm here with Charlotte Duckworth to talk about her latest book, The Sanctuary. If you could give us a quick summary of the plot, please, Charlotte.
Hi, thank you for having me. The Sanctuary is a sort of locked room mystery, although not technically speaking, but it's basically about four pregnant women who go away for the weekend to a yoga retreat in Devon, thinking that they're going to have this lovely, relaxing, pampering, prenatal kind of experience. But unfortunately, they've all got secrets. Some of them are slightly more sinister secrets than the others. And yeah, basically nothing goes to plan and somebody dies, obviously, because it's a thriller. And yeah, hopefully it's quite a twisty ride. So yeah, I've got it here.
I would say it definitely is a twisty ride. That's a good description. Why pregnant women? I know it's quite common. There's a lot of authors seem to be using that at the minute. That's quite curious as to why that.
Well, do you know what? That is quite interesting. So because my debut novel was based on my experience of losing my job when I was pregnant. So I've kind of always written about motherhood and themes around parenting and family. And so I love reading locked room mysteries. Like I love all of Lucy Foley's books. And I thought I want to write one, but I kind of wanted to put my spin on it. So all of my books, they're behind me, not very well displayed, all have a bit of a parenting theme. So I thought, how can I do a locked room mystery that's sort of in that world with like pregnancy and stuff? And also I feel like when you're pregnant, you're so vulnerable. And there's a lot of people trying to give you advice and maybe quite often unsolicited advice. And, it's kind of a time of quite a lot of insecurity for a lot of women. So it sort of made sense really for me. And yeah, it just kind of, I like the idea of doing a prenatal retreat, like a yoga thing, because personally, I can't think of anything worse than sleeping in a tent for 3 nights, but some people enjoy it. So yeah.
I must admit, I have only done about 4 or 5 holidays in a tent, and I can see why, because if it rains, it's a nightmare, isn't it?
It's just not my idea of like a luxury relaxing experience to be sleeping in a tent, but I know I've got a lot of friends that absolutely love that kind of thing, so everybody is different. But for me, I'd rather be in a bed that's more comfortable than my home bed if I'm having a holiday. So yeah.
When you started your first book, and what drew you to crime? Because I know it's quite popular, but different people have different routes in.
Yeah, so I would say, like a lot of novelists, when I wrote The Rival, I didn't really have a genre in mind. Like I didn't really think about it in that kind of, because you're so new when you first start writing. And I read a lot of books, but as a reader, I'd never really consciously thought about genre. And it just ends up being quite dark. And actually, it was probably slightly more literary when my agent submitted it. But then when Quercus bought it, they said, we see this as a thriller or suspense, really. I mean, there's a bit of overlap between the two. And I was quite surprised because I was like, oh, right, okay. So I did do some edits with them to make it fit that kind of genre slightly more. But yeah, it wasn't really a conscious thing. It's just that I seem to be drawn to writing about dark things. And I do generally love reading crime and I love reading thrillers. So I guess that kind of makes sense too. You absorb a lot when you're reading.
Well, dark things are often the route to crime, but when you're talking about locked rooms, characters are crucial in a locked room, because it's like if they're not well drawn, you've got a problem in hiding who it is. How have you managed to get that challenge? Because you've got a lot of characters in your book.
Yeah, I've been saying this quite a lot. I will not be writing a book with this many characters in again because it's really hard. I thought it'd be easier, stupidly. I kind of thought I'm going to write this book over a 3-day time period, because I've struggled a lot in the past. My books have like had long kind of scopes of like 2 years or whatever, and I find timelines really give me a headache. So I thought, I'm just going to write this book over 3 days. That'll be easy. But obviously, I'm going to have to have lots of different viewpoints to make it more interesting. And then that actually ended up being really difficult. So it was a real challenge. I did do quite a lot of kind of character work before I started writing, so I had to make sure all the women were different, obviously, and they all had different secrets, and I kind of I did a lot of note taking about all of them. But I will say, for me, a lot of it comes in the editing, so I tend to write quite crappy first drafts, and then I spend a lot of time editing, so I do lots of different drafts, and each kind of draft the characters get slightly more finessed and distinct, and my editor is amazing as well, so she had a lot of kind of input into, especially Bonnie, who's one of the younger characters. So yeah, it was tough. It was definitely not an easy book to write, and I thought I was giving myself an easy ride, but anyway, you live and learn.
I must admit, I do like Bonnie, as you say. His character's very different, and it really worked well on the audiobook because each character was narrated by a different person.
So you listened on audio. You see, I haven't listened to the audio because I can't bear to listen to my own work, but that's good to know. That's good.
If you've not listened to the audio, then when your first book came out and they asked you to choose a narrator, what was that like? Because if you don't generally listen to audio, it must be a different experience.
Yeah, actually, that is a really interesting question. So when The Rival came out, I didn't expect to. I don't even think I really realised what audio was, and then my editor sent me, like you said, a list of actors and said, look, they've recorded samples, and you choose basically, or let us know which ones you think sound most like your characters. And it really blew my mind. It was really interesting because you do instinctively, strangely know how your characters would sound. So, I listened to all these actors' samples and they're all great, but I was like, no, that one is definitely that character. You sort of, it's quite, you have very strong feelings about it, even though you don't realize you might have them. And the funny thing is, since I've obviously had all my books have been released in audio, since then I've actually started listening to audio, and now I love it. So yeah, it's taken me a while, but I still don't want to listen to my own books. I mean, by the time you finish writing them, you never want to hear anything about them ever again. So the last thing I want to do is listen to it. But I do know some writers that do. It's probably a good idea, actually. It's like almost like gives you a different perspective on your own writing. But yeah, I love audio now, and I think it's so interesting how narrators can make or break a book, because there's some books I've listened to on audio and I just can't get on with the narrator, and I think, oh, that's such a shame, because it's probably a brilliant book, but it put me right off. It's weird.
Have you spoken to the narrator at all? And because some authors I've spoken to, they've spoken to the narrator and they've deliberately made it awkward so that the narrator has problems with the accent and put phrases.
Oh no. No, I think actually the narrators for The Perfect Father, so that one has done really well in audio. They were brilliant, and they found me on Instagram, so I have chatted to them only on Instagram briefly, but no, it's quite separate. Like I feel quite removed from that process.
Yeah. when writing in your other name, because you've got like two different genres, how do you separate yourself?
Yeah, that's really well. It's quite a new thing for me to have. So I've got another book coming out next year under a different name, and so I don't know really. I suppose the books are very different. So the nice thing about writing suspense and thrillers and crime is that there is a very kind of not a formula, that's too cynical, but that that you can kind of get the elements right, and you know what you're doing, and you know what readers expect, and there's kind of like there's logic to it almost, and they're like great big jigsaw puzzles, which I love. Whereas my other book is more literary, probably more book club, so that was actually much harder. And they do just feel like very different projects. So far I haven't found it difficult, but it's more editing both at the same time, which I have been doing over the last few months. I would not do again, because that is quite, I feel like I've got these two competing things going on, and it does give you a bit of a headache. But generally it's nice in a way, because it's like a break. And although I love writing suspense, I've written 5 now in 5 years, so you kind of, it's nice to do something slightly different.
I can imagine how you feel about that, because I'm doing several projects at the same time myself, and I'm just wondering what you do for your own sanctuary, using the book title there, for to allow you to have a break when you're doing multiple projects?
Yeah, this is something I'm not very good at. It's funny because I finished editing, doing the structural edits for the book that's coming out next year under a different name last Thursday, and then I've started writing a new book today. And I said to my other half, I was like, I had one day off, and he was like, for God's sake, I need like a month off really. But I'm quite driven, and I do really enjoy it. Like I did, and obviously well, not obviously, but I do have a young child, and so when she's on school holidays and stuff, I tend to not do writing, or I'll do more like publicity stuff and writing articles and things. So I do get breaks, but I know what you mean. It's quite incessant. I think I'm wondering if I'll burn out, but at the moment, I'm loving it. So we'll see.
Yeah, because you wrote a blog about in your debut year. You don't blog anymore, but seem to be quite a good way to de-stress yourself.
Yeah, no, I miss blogging. I mean, there's so many things I want to do that I just don't have time for. I'm not very good on Instagram. Like, there's all these things I keep thinking I should be sending newsletters. It's quite a full-on job being an author. But at the moment, like, I've spoken to lots of author friends about this, and they always say to me, the best marketing is writing another book. So that's the thing you really need to focus on. So that's the priority. But yeah, I do. Yeah, blogging I used to be very personal with my blog. I used to talk about all kinds of things. Probably not very appropriate.
Well, it's perfectly fine. It allows readers to see inside the author, which is quite interesting, because that's what I'm trying to do with my own book. What kind of things did you put on your blog that allowed you to explain to the readers who you were as a person?
So I actually started blogging like a long time ago, before I got my book deal. I was a journalist. That was my initial job. And lots of journalists have blogs. So I used to blog about all kinds of things. I mean, I started as an interiors journalist. So I blogged about my flat and like my decorating projects. And then when I got pregnant, I kind of had a pregnancy diary, which I found very cathartic, just writing about what was going on with me and stuff. And I got quite a lot of people reading that, actually. I think anytime you're kind of authentic and vulnerable on the internet, people respond to it quite well. So that was kind of where it started. But then when I did get my book deal, I remember thinking, okay, maybe there's more people now reading my words. Perhaps I should be a little bit more discreet. Plus, my daughter got older. So, I didn't want to talk about her as a child. As a baby, it was different. But it was just a creative outlet. And I suppose also I wasn't writing novels then. So it was another way of writing, really. I think, blogging is brilliant for authors if they have the time.
I mean, now that you've written five thrillers, I mean, it's like very quick to kind of who would you say your favourite character is over that period? Because you must have gone through quite a few now.
Yeah, that's well, my favourite character is actually in the book that's coming out later this year, called The Wrong Mother, that I'm not supposed to talk about yet. But I'm really, really excited about that book. But from the other books, probably Robin in The Perfect Father. So he's not a very nice man, and he was a lot of fun to write. Well, yeah, he's quite a complex character, so I really enjoyed writing about him. But yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm quite fond of all my characters. I think you spend so much time with them, you do they grow on you.
Do you like writing villains particularly, or is it?
Yeah, it's weird. I find, strangely, writing villainous men the easiest. Not sure what it says about me. I haven't had that many villainous men in my life, but I don't know. I feel like my imagination goes a bit crazy. So I really, really enjoy writing kind of very wicked men. And what I find the hardest is writing nice women, like sort of relatable everyday women, without them seeming bland. That's always the challenge, I think, because you've got to have something that a lot of reviewers say when they read thrillers will be like, oh, I didn't like the character, or I didn't like her, or she's annoying. And I always think, oh, it's so difficult though, because you want to write somebody complex and interesting who's got probably some issues and some past baggage and stuff, and people aren't always likable. So it's a real balance to try and, like, you know, create tension whilst keeping somebody relatable. It's
Yeah,
tricky.
I mean, like in the science you've written like multiple generations of characters. I mean, what's your favourite age range to write in?
That's a really interesting question. I probably like writing, like I enjoyed writing Bonnie because she's sort of sparky and she does things I wouldn't do, and then, you know, she's kind of young and sort of insecure but also confident. It's a weird combination. So yeah, she was a lot of fun to write. Yeah, but then conversely, on the other side of it, the book, like I said, that's coming out later this year, has a lady in her 60s, is one of the main. There's two characters in that book, and I loved writing her so much. And actually, when I finished the book, I started crying for her. She like really got to me. She's kind of a recluse, and she lives with her cat. And anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but she was great
Yeah,
fun. So I suppose I like writing oddballs, you know, people who are slightly outside of society as well. Yeah, characterization, it's so hard. Like, I find it the most difficult part of writing, but I do get a lot of positive feedback on my characters, and I think that's mostly because my editor's amazing and she makes me really work on them.
well, with it being like a hippie retreat and there's like lots of different reasons why they're there, yeah, you have to make sure that they're all individual. I mean,
Yeah.
you say that you work on that mainly through the edit. Like, what was the most difficult part of writing the book?
The most difficult part was actually the plot and like the logistics of it. So because there's there's kind of five main characters and then there's a few other peripheral characters. It was trying to keep a track of what each character knew about the other character, and like each chapter it kind of
Yeah,
alternates. And I had to try and think, hang on, where was this person in this scene, and what have they seen, and what's this person? And that was really difficult. So there were things like my editor would come back and be like, hang on, Bonnie wasn't there, or she wouldn't know this, and I'd be like, oh no, of course. So that was that was really hard. like I said, I won't be doing a book with multiple narrators, because trying to see each scene through different eyes and trying to keep a track in your head, and obviously there were a few red herrings in it, so I wanted it to be really twisty. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of things that happen, and yeah, it was really hard, actually. I would say it's probably my most difficult book to write, but yeah, also kind of quite fun.
so so how many of your other books are like or did you do like single POV or was that double? Because I've obviously not had a chance to read all your stuff yet. So
Yeah, so none of them are single, actually. So the rival is 2 points of view, and
yeah,
then Follow Me is should be able to remember this. I think it's 2, and then no, it's 3, and then The Perfect Father is 2, and then obviously this one is like 7. So yeah, mostly it's 2. 2 is kind of a safe number, but I would love to write a book from just one point of view, actually, and that's kind of something
yeah.
I'm hoping to do, because I feel like that's another challenge. Because actually, sometimes it's easier to have multiple points of view, because you know, if you get bored, you can always just flip to the other character, and it kind of gives you more content.
With 7 characters, did you write it linearly, or was it easier to just flip between them, like you say?
No, I always write kind of chronologically. I write in the order of the book. I've never been able to like write the ending first, or yeah, no, I basically just sat down and wrote it as it is. I mean, obviously in the edit things get moved and extra chapters get added and stuff, but I was very clear that I wanted it to be kind of, it follows exactly the same pattern. So each section, I can't remember how many parts there are, but it's kind of divided up into small parts, and in each part there's like each woman's point of view in the same order. I don't know, that was another thing in my head. I was like trying to challenge myself to, yeah. So
Yeah, there's a great like dark voice at the beginning of the
yeah.
book. Did you always have that dark voice in mind, or was that something that was added later?
No, that was I wrote that first. In fact, I think this is the first book that I've written the prologue, and it stayed. So yeah, the first literal, it's like one little page. I wrote that first because I was really fascinated by it. So it starts with me, with this anonymous voice saying that the number one cause of death in pregnant women is murder. And I'd read that somewhere and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? How can that be true? So I did a lot of research and it is true, and it's terrifying, to be honest. So I thought that's a really good way to start a book, because that's kind of a very creepy statistic and horrible. So yeah, that came to me quite easily. But what's interesting, I suppose, as a writer, is that I didn't really know who was saying those words when I wrote that chapter. And then as I kind of developed the plot and stuff, then I was like, okay, now I know. And I think that, I don't want to use this expression, but I'm such a child, I can't think what else to call it. The baddie changed throughout the writing. So I had one idea, and then halfway through I was like, no, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Because of course, having read it, I can see where the baddie came from, but I would love to, in a fly on the wall, to see when you switched it.
Yeah. No, it was it was a bit of a nightmare. I mean, that probably was one of the hardest things, was once I changed my mind, because I thought, oh, it's too obvious if it's that person, so now I'm going to change it to this person, but then I'm also going to add, anyway, I can't, it'd be just spoiling it all, I'd be full of spoilers, but yeah, it was interesting, but also then tricky, because then you have to go back and make sure everything makes sense. And there's a few instances where, like, there's a scarecrow that's set on fire, and I was like, okay, that I know who's done it, but where are they in this scene? It's that kind of thing where you've got to make sure it made sense logistically. So yeah, it was a challenge.
I mean, having 7 points of view must have made that so much easier to kind of, because when you've only got 2 or 3 to hide the solution. Yes. I can see why you went for 7.
Well, you need multiple suspects, don't you? And I was kind of thinking slightly Agatha Christie, where anyone could have done it, and you don't know, and they've all got a motive. I mean, not everybody in my book, but like, you could be suspicious of all of them, and it is quite fun to try and guess. That's why I love reading these books, because I'm always desperate to, like, figure it out, and then I never do.
So you say you've always been a big fan of the lock room. What was the first book you read that think, oh, the lock room's for me?
Probably. I mean, it's not very original, is it? Probably The Hunting Party. Yeah, I mean, everybody loved that book, and I did as well. Obviously, I've read them in the past, but I think that was the one where I thought, wow, this is so clever. And it was just like completely unputdownable, and I really wanted to figure it out, and I was very upset when I didn't guess any of it. So yeah, and then what was Lucy Foley's follow-up called? I can't remember now. Anyway, her second book as well. I haven't read The Paris Apartment yet, though. I'm very keen to read that.
Yeah. I think her second book was Longlisted for Thesis, because I think I read that.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
What's it called? Is it the wedding? The one about the wedding?
I think.
I can't remember the name. The guest list. The guest list.
The guest list. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I think I preferred that to The Hunting Party, actually. I just loved that, and the sense of the place, like, everything about it was amazing. So yeah, I mean, I am shamelessly sort of admitting that I wanted to emulate that when I wrote The Sanctuary.
I mean, it's just that the fact that was on an island as well.
Yeah. And there's quite a few of them now. So I think, like, Sarah Pearce has got one coming out next year. So there's kind of, it's its own sort of subgenre, I think. There's just so much possibility with those kind of books.
When deciding on a tent yoga retreat, have you did you do any, like, kind of research on where to put the retreat?
Yeah, so I love Devon. I love the West Country, and I've pretty much been there every year for as long as I can remember on holiday. Never to a retreat, but just a general, like, Devon. And I also have relatives that live down there, so I'd been, actually, funny enough, I'd been on an Arvon course. I don't know if you know about Arvon, which is like a writing kind of, they run residential creative writing courses. So I did one of them years ago, and they have venue in Oakhampton, which is this is kind of near where the sanctuary was set. And I remember going there, and there was like no mobile signal, and it was so, I didn't stay in a tent, thankfully, but it was like really, really remote. And I just remember feeling very isolated and thinking, oh, even though this is beautiful, this is quite kind of creepy. So I think it was always going to be Devon for me because it's somewhere I know quite well. And also, as for the yoga, I've never been on a yoga retreat. I've done lots of yoga and like classes and stuff, but I'd never been on a retreat before. But luckily, there are a lot of them on the internet that you can research. And also, I found quite a few bloggers and stuff that had done YouTube videos about their experiences. So that was really helpful. I had that gave me lots of ideas about there's a section in the book called the fireside meditation and stuff like that, which I wouldn't have necessarily known people do, but they do. So yeah, it was really, really fun to research actually. Yeah, it was one of the best bits about this book.
I love the idea of like places I've not been to. Is there anywhere in the world, like a foreign location, that you would like to write about that you've not written about yet?
Oh, so I also really love Greece, and I studied classics at university. So for like 4 years when I was at uni, I just went to Greece every summer to explore, and I'm like really interested in the kind of history and the architecture and archaeology. So I should write a book set in Greece because I do know I've been to lots of places in Greece. But I'm kind of scared. Like I had an idea of it. I did start writing something, but I don't know why. I really admire writers who can set books in foreign countries because I'm just so convinced I'd mess something up and the reader would go, "That's not what it's called here," or "We don't drive on that side of the road," or I'd just get some detail wrong, and then it would just blow the whole book. So yeah, one day when I get a bit braver, I would like to set one on a Greek island, but not a romance.
Yeah, Greece seems to get very sinister things. I've just finished Julie Crouch's Cuckoo, and of course the husband of one of the characters is from Greece, and it's just very dark over there, and you don't know what's it's going to be like.
Yeah, I should. No, I actually love reading books set abroad. Atmospheric books. It's funny because when I wrote my first ever novel, which didn't get published, that was all completely because of a place. Like it was all inspired by a place. And I think these books, most of them are set in London, and that's just laziness. And that was where I was familiar with. So this is the first book I've written that's sort of set outside of London, and it has made me a bit more kind of. I'm getting braver. So one day I'll write something set abroad. But
Given that we were just talking about Harrogate and festivals, I've never actually read a book by someone that's done a locked room mystery at a festival. I know that would probably be a bit of a cliche in the community, but I'm waiting for someone to do it.
That's a really good idea. Someone does need to do it. Do they do like a murder mystery night at Harrogate? I feel like
it's a murder table thing. With the readers and stuff. Yeah.
Ah, you see, I've never been to any of the proper events. I've just stood outside in the tent drinking. I need to like get some tickets and go to actual, because I've heard about the author dinner and that sounds amazing. That's such a good idea. I mean, that hotel is so fascinating too, with the whole thing about Agatha Christie going missing there and stuff. A lot of heritage there.
So you've just like gone to the event and just hung around with your mates there?
Yeah, well, the first year my publisher invited me, but my book wasn't out yet. So I went up with them, but I felt very like a proper newbie, where you're sort of in awe of everybody. You're looking around, you're like, oh my God, there's so many famous authors here. And then people ask you about your book and you're kind of like, I can't even show you a cover yet that's not out yet. So I was just kind of quite shy. And then the next year I felt a bit more confident. But I think there's so many people there, and it's like this kind of whirlwind. I think for authors, there's just so much to do and so many people to see. And obviously you're seeing like your publisher and maybe your publicist and stuff, and other authors so I'm published by Quercus, so there's like a Quercus dinner and stuff, so which is lovely. But this year, like I said to you earlier, I'm hoping to go up for a bit longer because I've never done the whole kind of,
Yeah.
what is it, 4 days? Yeah, Thursday to
Yeah,
Sunday.
4 days. 4 days.
Yeah, so I'm going to really go for it this year. Also, my daughter's a bit older, so I used to feel a bit bad about leaving her, but now she's fine. She's 6. She can cope without me for a weekend. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. And it'll be so nice after COVID. Like, it's been so nice to. I was actually just literally filling in my calendar for this month and realizing there's all these events happening, and it's so, it's such a relief after 2 years of nothing.
What what was your favourite online event if you've watched one like over the COVID period?
Oh, that's okay. So a friend of mine called Emma Christie
Yeah.
set up a Facebook, I think it's a Facebook group called the Diary of the Debut Author or debut novelist, can't remember. And she was running like weekly kind of Facebook chats with people, and that was really good. And it was because I know what it's like when you're a debut. It's so overwhelming, and it's so nice to sort of be able to talk to other debuts who are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think she's obviously not a debut because I think her second book came out last year, but she's still doing it and interviewing like the next load of debut authors, and that was the loveliest thing. Not much was good about lockdown, but that was the nice thing about it, was when there was kind of much more of a sense of community and people pulling together to do things. So yeah, in a way I was a bit jealous because there was like a debut author group on Facebook, all authors, and they were so supportive of one another, and I was like, I want to get in on this, but my book came out 2 years ago, so I'm not a debut. And because there was they were kind of all supporting each other and sharing each other's books, and I thought this is really good. Whereas obviously when my book came out, there wasn't the same kind of need for that, but in a way it's been like an unexpected good thing that's come out of it, building that community.
Yeah. Diary of a Debut that Emma did wasn't purely crime.
No, that's true.
So, like, we were talking about the fact that you write under another name. What kind of other genre would you choose to go into that you'd like to read that you've not?
That's a good question. So this is something that you might know more about than me. So I never think of these as crime. I shouldn't say this to a crime group, because for me they're suspense / psychological thriller. So they're definitely not thrillers because there's not like loads of people getting cut to death and stuff. But at the same time they're pretty dark. So I always think I want to write crime, and obviously I know there's a lot of overlap, and people who enjoy crime enjoy like suspense and stuff. But actually, I do have an idea that I'm really excited about. That I'm going to try and write in the autumn, and that I spoke to my agent about, and that is very much crime. Obviously, I can't talk about it, but and that for me is a challenge again, because as I said, even though these are, it's a similar sort of idea, these are definitely not like pure crime books, and I think crime writers are amazing. Like it's how you keep coming up with kind of ingenious plots when there's just been so many books. There are so many crime novels, and yet people come up with fresh kind of ideas and stuff. That I find that very inspiring. So that would be my next choice.
I was looking through the number of debuts that come out for a book I'm writing in like next year. Is there any body that you've been speaking to online that's coming out with a debut that you think, I've got to tell people about because it sounds really good?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've just read, I think it's a debut. Now, this is the problem. Yeah, I'm fairly sure it's a debut. I just read a book called After Dark by Jane Cowie, I think. I don't know how to pronounce this name. And it's about men being on curfew, so they're not allowed out at night. All men have to stay in, and women can go out at night. And I just thought it was such a brilliant premise. And then it was a really good book, so it was a proper page turner. I suppose it's probably more of a thriller again. And I think that's coming out soon. Actually, might be next month. But yeah, that one's at the moment I'm kind of reading a weird mix of. I'm trying to read more literary stuff as well, because I think the problem with writing there's not a problem, but having written 5 books in 5 years and read a lot of suspense, I sort of feel like you can get a bit overloaded with it. So I'm trying to do different stuff. But what I really want to do is I really want to get into reading romance, but I've never managed to. Just isn't my thing. And then I know I'm missing loads of great books, but I just sort of don't know. My attention isn't held.
I must admit that is my guilty pleasure that I do
Is
like
it?
to watch. Yeah,
Ah,
romance, and one of the books that I've managed to read all the way through is Me Before You.
oh, yeah.
I love that. I love that series as well. I mean, I didn't expect that she managed to write 3 books in the series, but yeah.
Yeah, well, do you know what? That's so funny you should say that, because I think that's probably one of the only books in that genre that I finished, and I read it on a plane years ago, and I do remember just crying my eyes. I think we were going to America,
Absolutely.
literally
Yeah.
just sobbing in my airplane seat, because it was just like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this book is so moving. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'd love to write something like that, but I just unfortunately I think my soul is too dark.
Is it the characters that appeal to you in romances? Do you think?
I think it's that sort of sense of lack of cynicism. I think my problem is, I don't know. It's that British thing, and as well as sort of being slightly pessimistic and miserable, and I want to be more optimistic and joyful. So I feel like those kind of books. Do you know what's interesting? We were talking about audio. I think I should probably try and listen to a few of them on audio, because I think that might work better for me, because there's more almost like a radio play.
Yeah.
Where you don't need that kind of constant page turning, heart stopping suspense stuff, and it's actually just lovely to listen to and get absorbed in. So I'm probably going to try a few. And like, I worked with Beth O'Leary, so she's published by my publisher too, and I read her debut and loved it, but I haven't read the others. So I mean, she's had like, I think she's got 4 out now, so I should definitely catch up on those, I think.
I just think that romance is something that is underplayed in crime. There's not. I know you need the darkness, but I think relationships are key
Yeah,
to a good crime novel.
that's actually a very good point. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I can't think of any crime. Well, I mean, there's that kind of trope slightly of the police having a relationship with each other, I suppose, that quite often happens. But or like the policeman who's dysfunctional and can't be in a relationship for whatever reason, but is really good at solving crimes. But yeah, like what would you say is your favourite? Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Of course,
If you had one crime book you could recommend for me, what would it be?
it's got to be Stuart Turton's first one.
Oh yeah.
And that's the Eden Hardcastle. It just reminds me so much of your book because of the multiple POV. Yeah, just
Okay. I'm going to try that.
I know it kind of switches around, but it's the multiple POV within that, and I think that it really works when you've got multiple POV on audio. I think that's something that really works if you've got multiple narrators. But if you've got multiple POV with only one narrator, it can be awkward.
Yeah, I mean that's hard as well for the narrator, because unless they're doing accents, and then that's like can go really. I mean, it's such a tricky job. I don't know how. I mean, I know they're obviously actors and they're trained, but the focus it must take is kind of quite intense, I'm sure. But no, I've heard a lot about that book actually, and I haven't read it. This is the most embarrassing thing. I am the slowest reader. I'm quite a quick writer, and I'm such a slow reader. And people send me a lot of books, obviously now, and I feel constantly guilty because I just get through like one every 2 weeks, and I've got friends who can read like one a day, and I'm like, it's just very strange. I don't know why. I'm just not fast. I can't speed read. So yeah, I wish I actually said a couple of years ago, I was talking to my agent and I said, oh, I really wish I could do like a speed reading course, because then I could get through so many more books. And she said no, because then actually it kind of takes some of the enjoyment out of it. Like you want to read it at the right pace so that you're really getting a sense of it, not just scanning it. But it's a proper. I mean, I'm always amazed by reviewers and people who've read my books, and they'll be like, "Oh, I bought your book on Saturday and I'd finished it by Sunday night, and thanks very much, I loved it." And I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could do that."
Yeah, I think in the 6 years I've been doing it, I've only ever finished, I think 3 books in maybe one or I managed to finish See Dated as a Short Man in one day, and that was because of a launch day, and it was thankfully it was only 8 hours, but I was still reading it on the way to the launch event.
Oh my god, yeah, no, I've had a few of them actually when I've done some kind of interviews like this with other authors, and I think I haven't read that book yet, and then it's like 3 hours before I'm like desperately cramming it, going, oh god, I've got to read it in case they ask me a question about it. It's hard. I find it quite difficult to read fiction when I'm writing, and obviously I'm writing 2 books a year at the moment, so I'm writing all the time pretty much. So that's a challenge as well. Like I've got a real fear of reading somebody's book and like inadvertently kind of not copying but taking elements from it, because a lot of the time you don't realize it's sort of subconscious, you absorb stuff. So that's another kind of worry of mine. So when I'm writing thrillers, I won't read them, but I do get sent a lot now, and then I feel bad because I'm thinking, oh, I really would love to, because obviously authors like to support each other by giving quotes and stuff, but I haven't found a solution to this, and I know that unfortunately the more successful you get, the harder it is as well. So
I must have
the more people want you.
I'm finding it more and more harder to do the old job while I'm writing as well. So I get the problem.
How many books would you review like in a month, do you think?
Oh god, it's got to be in a month. I would say between 12 and 15.
Wow. Oh my god. So do you have a Goodreads thing where you like keep track of do you like have an annual challenge? I've seen people do that, and I'm like,
when I started as a reviewer, I used the Goodreads challenge to mark whether I was doing a good enough job by seeing whether I could reach the target. But within 2 years, I thought, I'm like, I just thought I can't keep up with the challenge of trying to fix to a number.
It is amazing how much some people read. I'm like in awe and jealous as well, because I love reading, and it's harder when you've got a young child as well. And I'm always very tired, so I don't read much in bed. But I used to read lots on holiday. That was like I'd go away for a week and read like 4 books. And I miss that a lot, because obviously holidays, as I said, are different when you have a young child. But this is a good thing about audio, though. I'm a massive convert, because you can listen while you're like cleaning the bathroom or like washing or whatever, and it's like really makes chores more enjoyable.
I mean, I love listening on the move. One of the best places I've listened to is next to where boats come, and you just sit in a pub and drink and
nice.
listen to books at the same time.
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we were talking about panels and things. Like you were saying that you were having to prepare for panels you've been on. What would you say is the most interesting panel you've been on, and why?
Well, probably I did the oh god, what's it called? The Crime Festival in London. Capital Crime.
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain is so bad at retaining names.
Right.
Yeah. So I did that the first year it opened, and I was a debut. So I was on the panel with a lot of debut novelists. I had Leslie Cara was on it, and then I can't remember who else. Who else? Oh, anyway, it was a lovely group, and that was quite eye-opening to me, because it was so bizarre that there were people like asking us questions. But we did have to read each other, so we were on teams, and then we had to read each other's novels, and then we got asked questions about each other's books, and they were so hard. They were like really obscure things, like what's the cat called or stuff. And obviously when you read a book, you're mostly thinking about the whole themes and stuff. You're not really thinking about this inconsequential cat that popped up in chapter 3. So that was really tricky, but it was actually really fun, and there was I remember laughing a lot. And I mean, I think they kind of gave up on scoring us, and it was just more quite raucous, and that was so nice. And I think that was one of the first times I felt like a proper author, because they had a section there where they had all the books out, so people could like buy your book and you could sign it, and I was like, oh, people are queuing up to buy my book, this is so nice. So yeah, that was really fun. And then unfortunately that was right before lockdown, and then it was kind of like everything, as I said, went online. So I'm hopeful that those kind of events are going to come back. And I'm trying to think if I'm doing one. Oh, actually, the next one I'm doing is online. But let's keep our fingers crossed. But, I mean, in a way, I do know that online events are much more accessible, and that's a really good thing. And also that so many more people can come, just in general, because it's not as expensive and stuff. So
I was just curious as to what if you were to do a panel yourself, what thing would you choose?
Something about the most inventive deaths. So
What would
what I
you,
think is really hard for writers is coming up with interesting and original ways to kill people. Like it's really tricky because there's a car crash in my debut and I'm so ashamed of myself. And I do remember reviews going, oh, can't believe there's a car crash in it. Like, and stuff like that where you're like, oh, I was trying to be, but it's so hard to like think of something new. And actually the death in the sanctuary was my favorite death. If I can have a favorite death, it was
oh, yeah, yeah,
very gory.
yeah, yeah, not very nice, but
No.
that's what makes a good book for me, because you don't know whether it's going to be a soft death or a gruesome one.
Yeah, I mean that was actually really fun to research because I'm not going to talk about exactly what happens, but there was a lot of kind of checking out exactly what would happen if this happened to somebody and like how long would it take and stuff like that. It was really fun, and kind of a bit eye-opening actually that it's that easy
Yeah,
to anyway. But yeah, I'd love to kind of have a panel where people talk about the craziest deaths they've read or the most kind of original or yeah.
so what would you say is the craziest death that you've enjoyed reading then?
Oh, I shouldn't have said that now because I yeah. Oh God. Do you know what? I'm automatically thinking of television and that's not very loyal to books.
That's fine.
Oh no, I'll have I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, being self-absorbed, I'm quite chuffed with my Death in the Sanctuary. But anything where people like fall out of a window or I don't know, hit on the head by something flying out of the sky.
yeah,
Just yeah, I mean, because it is tricky. I mean, there's obviously knife and guns are a bit, they've been done
yeah.
many times.
I mean, I love the idea of falling out a window. I mean, a good falling out the window plot has got to be like Christopher Brookmeyer's rubber rubber ducks, I think it is.
Oh, really? And someone does fall out? Okay.
And the fourth or fifth one he wrote in the mystery series, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really quite a novel way of using a
Oh.
falling out of a window thing.
Or being pushed out of a plane, that would be quite dramatic.
Yeah,
Not very nice. Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean. Like, I'm not very good at this. I'm kind of like in awe of people who can come up with original ways. It is always a challenge though, because it's got to feel slightly realistic. Otherwise, it's not
yeah.
like you're writing Bond.
I mean,
Well, maybe some people like writing like that, but I think with my stuff, it's much more sort of domestic, so it has to be slightly grounded in everyday life.
yeah. Why was it domestic that thing? Because when you think locked room, you think of like a detective that pops in or like a Poirot and stuff. So did you avoid that police procedural? Because it's very difficult to get that right, I've found when I'm trying
Yeah.
to do it myself.
Yes. So I think this is what slightly put me off writing pure crime because quite often you have to have, well, pretty much always you have to have the police involved. And all the police have been involved in all my books in very minor ways.
Yeah.
So I haven't had to do too much research. However, I found, I think you've had him actually on Graham Bartlett.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know he existed when I wrote the other three books. And then I had a session with him, which was so helpful. So he's a police advisor, ex-police advisor, and he just gives you amazing help with this kind of thing because it's so embarrassing if you get stuff wrong. You really want it to be authentic. So I really enjoy reading police procedural books, but I'm always in awe at just how much you need to know. And yeah, it is a definite. It's a skill weaving that in without it seeming too dry, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a whole different subgenre that you have to do a lot of research in. And it's going to be
Yeah.
a while before I can get one of them out, I think.
Well, you're going to be very busy. You're like booked up for 4 years.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a 4-year plan, so yeah.
That's amazing.
I can't believe it's like only 3 months away. But yeah, I can't wait.
It is quite weird, I think, the run up to your debut. Like it's a kind of magical time and you have to try not to get too stressed and try and enjoy it as much as you can, because I think I spent the whole time just going, what is going on? What is going on? Oh God, is this good? Is this good? And then I do remember my debut was reviewed in the Guardian, and I was going out for dinner with some friends, and I was waiting for a tube. I don't know what was going on. Anyway, I was late, and somebody like tweeted at me saying, "Oh, congratulations on your Guardian review." And I was like, what? Because I had no clue that I was going to be reviewed in the Guardian, and then I had to like quickly Google it, and luckily it was online. And it was just so surreal. I was like standing there waiting for this tube, going, "Oh look, they're writing about my book." It was just amazing. Oh, wow. So you have to remember that, like all those little things, because it's quite a whirlwind.
Yeah, I mean, when I got signed for Spellbound, and the reaction on the internet was amazing. What was it like for you?
Yeah, so I didn't really know that many writers, so I feel like I was kind of, my friends and family were very happy for me. Like I remember talking about it on Facebook when it was announced in the bookseller, and I think it was my poor friends and family. They know I've been trying to write for such a long time, and it took me a really long time to get my book deal. So everyone was just relieved. I think my parents were very relieved that I wasn't completely deluded, because I think they'd probably thought, oh my God, what is she doing? Like, she's clearly not going to get a book published. Stop writing books, Charlotte. And I was like, no, one day it will happen, believe me. And then everyone was very pleased. Yeah, it was lovely. And when The Perfect Father did quite well, that was really nice as well, because people suddenly were like, oh, actually people are buying it and enjoying it. So yeah, it's an amazing job. I would definitely not complain.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say to any debut to avoid in the
well, I would say to any writers in general to avoid comparison. Like, comparison is the worst thing, and you cannot compare your writing career to any other writing career because they're completely unique. And it's so easy to see all these people with their like 24-hour preempts and their massive £1 million book deals and their film rights and blah blah blah, blah, and just think, oh well, why don't I have that? Like, okay, I've got a book deal, but I want that. And it just, it's such a strange job. You can have an amazing start and then go nowhere, or you can have a slow and steady build. And I think you really have to just keep focusing on the writing and enjoying what you're doing and doing the best work you can. And this is so random, but I really love Mrs. Maisel. I don't know if you've watched it. It's on Amazon.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely.
So well written, like amazing. But I watched this weekend, I watched like the last episode, and in one of this character basically says to her, don't plan, work. And I thought that is amazing for writers, because that's like the motto. Just don't plan, because you can't plan. It's such a random career. You really can't plan. But what you can do is work really hard and do your best, and try and like focus on yourself, not what other people are doing, and try and find the joy in the writing, because I think there's a lot of it.
Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, for being thank you for coming along. And this will be my final interview for several months while I get ready for my launch day on I think it's the 23rd of July or something like that.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for letting me be your last interview. I'm honoured.
Well, yeah, I will be back for Bloody Scotland when I'm covering that, but I'm having a few months away. Yeah.
Cool. Well, best of luck, and hopefully I'll see you at Harrogate if you're going. So.
Oh, definitely will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.